The one thing that will throw your ability to go through and recognize cues of deception is the subject's state of mind or their mental illness. And if you're dealing with somebody who is borderline or across that line in terms of being a psychopath or a sociopath, all bets are off. And it becomes incredibly more difficult to go through and determine what's going on in terms of the truth and or deception. And yet, often we are so endeared to these individuals because they're really good at manipulating us that we don't recognize their psychopathy or the sociopathy. Now, they share a real common set of diagnoses. They're different on two different levels. One is that typically the psychopath is born that way, even though there are some traumas, different types of influences that can turn somebody psychopathically later on or earlier in their childhood. The sociopath is more constructed based on influences around them and mental illness and how they might handle that mental illness as well. I'm not being very clear here. The psychopath, neither of these individuals, these diagnoses, have a connection to a conscience, and that's what determines this to be a mental illness. In fact, that's what's leading to more and more diagnoses of narcissism these days. But there's just not that that consciousness, that feeling bad about something, feeling bad about what it is that they're doing. In fact, there's a strong disconnect. I use the example of Susan Johnson in a recent clip before this one. She certainly was psychopathic there. The psychopath, though, is still very acutely aware of the consequences that might happen to them as a result of their behavior. And so they might be a little bit more careful, not quite as reckless. The sociopath has no regard for themselves as well as for the individuals that are around them. Either way, in terms of detecting whether or not they're telling the truth, it becomes very difficult. Dr. Robert Hare, back in the 70s, is a Canadian psychologist, came out with the Hare PCLR scale of diagnosis, a psychological checklist, and then the R was for revised, because he came up with an initial checklist and then came up with a revised checklist. And this is something left to clinicians, okay, those who study psychology and who practice that and research that. But I want to talk about the indicators, though, of his checklist to maybe help you if you're living with a narcissist, if you are in a relationship with a sociopath or a psychopath. These concepts might be important for you to understand what they are. There's a laundry list of them, about 20 of them. I'm just going to go through about 10 of them here as we talk about why this makes lying or deception very difficult to go through and determine. The first one is this idea of their own charm, their charisma, and it's manipulative. They convert us over very easily, and we don't know why necessarily. I went to school with a friend of mine. We were both involved in theater. We were acting theater majors at the time, and this guy could take on any character and immediately have the dialect, just the ability to just kind of conform to whatever that was almost seamlessly, and he would leave himself behind. And he was funny, had this incredible vocal range. He was very good looking, charmed everybody who was around them, only to find out that he was a criminal. I won't disclose what he was getting into, but and he used his ability to endear people to him to his advantage there. You've experienced that on some level, and we're all surprised, like, what? This guy? You know, when the press show up at the neighbor's door of the individual who was discovered he was a serial killer, the neighbor always says, "Seemed like a nice guy to me," right? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. They're narcissistic. I'm a narcissist, and it's I've been dealing with that since I've been diagnosed about 12, 15 years ago, and it's been interesting to go through and kind of thwart my own behavior in terms of what my own narcissism is, and you know what? Diagnoses are showing that most men are. There's that ego, that misogyny, that kind of male-driven thing that makes us think that, just by virtue of our gender, that we might be better than anybody else, or by virtue of our race, or by virtue of our sexual orientation, whatever the case might be, which is ridiculous, right? And that's why it's the number one diagnosis in straight, white, male psychological evaluations. Wow. Yeah. Narcissism, where we think we're better than everybody else is. The sociopath, psychopath is amoral. Not that they are immoral, and there's a difference here, okay? To be moral is to abide by a set of standards. To be immoral is to break those standards. To be amoral is to not have any standards, all right? So this person finds no qualm in cheating or lying or anything that society might deem as being aberrant, like pornography or petty theft or things along that line. This doesn't matter to them. There's no construct there in terms of what might be ethical or moral there. The parasites. Hey, can you lend me $20? Mind if I come over for dinner tonight? Kinds of things. Typically, they're not the breadwinner. They allow somebody else to go through and take care of their needs and things that way. And they're remorseless. Since they don't have a conscience or a connection to conscience to their deeds, they don't feel bad about the things that they're doing. You can't see her, but Ginger's down here trying to get my attention. And as a result, there's just nothing there to make them feel bad or consciously aware of what it is that they might be doing. They're fakers. They feign emotion, and they're hard to detect because they're very well aware of what their face is doing. They're making a connection between the crow's feet and the laugh lines with their mouths as they go through and interact. And all these things kind of add up in increasing the difficulty to go through and determine whether or not they're telling the truth. They are incapable of empathy. Since they can't connect to their own conscience, they also can't connect to yours. They don't have the ability to go through and feel the way you feel, or to even try to feel the way you feel, because they believe that the way you feel is inferior to the way they feel. Yeah, see how this is getting a little dangerous? Does it remind you of anybody? Let's see, a good psychopath would be Dexter. Did you ever watch Dexter? Here was a guy who's, now these are characters, right? They're just television characters, but here was a guy who took great pains to go through and hide his own psychopathy, right? Being careful not to be caught in the murders that he was committing, to go through and rid society of the rotten people out there. He had no empathy, though. He just wasn't capable of being able to go through and feel that. He might, the character does with his son in the show, or maybe with a loved one, that way, a significant other. The flip side of that, the sociopath would be somebody similar to one of my favorite sociopaths in the movies is the Joker, right? Heath Ledger's Joker in the Batman. Certainly, he didn't care what anybody thought. Certainly, in what it was that he was doing, and also was incapable of empathy. According to Hare, the sociopath, psychopath is promiscuous. Okay, obviously they're very bad at relationships, and so since they don't have anything vested, they don't have the ability to empathize, and they're not going to go through and vest anything within that relationship other than be a parasite. They're going to go through and be sexually promiscuous as a result of that. They feel that they're owed something, that they're entitled. This goes along with the whole idea of narcissism. And they don't have they're not looking forward to anything. There's no goal orientation other than satiating what it is that they want, what it is that they want to accomplish, what it is that they want to conquer there. All these things add up to throwing us off and being able to determine whether or not they're fabricating the truth. A lot of the work that I did was in the context of the military. And as you might imagine, this was off the charts. There were more psychopathic individuals dealt with within that context than any other context I've worked with there, which is a little bit frightening, kind of scary. All right. If you have any comments, go ahead and leave them on this. I might create a discussion page for this week as well. All right. And you know where to find me otherwise. We'll talk to you later.